Hello and welcome to Supplywise, the what and why for residential, commercial, and industrial building supply. I'm your host, Andrew Stevens of Mountain Land Supply, and today we're talking with Lenore Stevens, who heads up employee engagement here at Mountain Land. How are you doing, Lenore?
Good. Thanks for having me, Andrew.
Glad to have you on because we're going to be talking a little bit about I just said employee engagement. That's what we're going to be talking about. What is employee engagement and what's the big deal? Like, why do companies need to have engagement with their employees?
So, I just read a book, and even you can have these big, thick books, and the beginning of the book said we don't have a definitive definition of employee engagement. The way that I and the leaders at Mountain Land define employee engagement is a way that we can make our employees feel successful enough in their jobs that they give us discretionary effort. The best way to explain it, I think, is in the same way that sales and marketing really focuses on the customer experience. Mm-hmm. It's my job to focus on the employee experience. What's it like to work for us? Where are the pain points? Where are we falling short? Where would our employees really like us to maybe step it up or do things a little differently? That's where my focus is.
Okay. You mentioned that you have some information from Gallup kind of that explains what's so important about engagement.
Yeah.
What are some of those statistics that we've got here?
And this is your average company that's probably not paying much attention to engagement because most companies don't. So they've studied this for about 25 years and they've come up with some really interesting information. The first thing that they established were 3 levels of engagement. You've got your engaged employees, you also have your not engaged employees, and your actively disengaged employees. Your engaged employees are the employees who work with passion and they feel a profound connection to their company. They're the ones that are driving the innovation and they're really moving your organization forward. The not engaged employees, these are your employees who are checked out. They're sleepwalking through their day. They put in their time, but you don't really have their heart. They're not putting in their passion or their energy. They're marking time. They're watching for that 5 o'clock thing. Your engaged employees, according to Gallup, account for about 30% of your workforce. Your not engaged employees account for about 40%. Then you have the third category, which is your actively disengaged employees. And these employees, these aren't the ones that are just unhappy at work. These are the ones that are acting out their unhappiness. They're working against you. They're sabotaging. They don't want to see the company succeed for a variety of reasons. And they're sort of undoing what those engaged employees are doing. And actually, the average company has about 30% of those. They're really not happy, and they don't want the company to succeed.
It sounds like Pete from Office Space to me.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. The way that Gallup defines engaged employee, and I believe this is a pretty accurate description, they believe in the organization. They desire to work to make things better. They understand the bigger picture, the business context of what they're doing. They're respectful of and they're helpful to colleagues. There's that willingness to go the extra mile, that discretionary effort I mentioned earlier. And they're the ones that are going to keep up to date with developments in the field. They're the ones that are going to read the trade magazines or, be reading books to further their education and their expertise in their fields. Those are your engaged employees. Gallup has surveyed well over 25 million workers. I think they're a little bit closer to 30 million at this point, over 25 years. And this is some of the things that they have found. 70% of American workers are either not engaged or actively disengaged, which is kind of what I was talking about before. You got 40% that are disengaged and then 30% that are actively disengaged. 50% of workers are unclear about what they're supposed to do at work. I think that a lot of managers are kind of shocked by that because they're like, I told them what to do. But you have half your workers saying, I'm not sure what I'm supposed to be doing. So somewhere that communication has broken down. Only 22% of U.S. employees are engaged and thriving, meaning they're engaged at work and they're thriving in their personal lives outside of home. When employees are engaged and they're thriving in their all-around life, then they're more likely to maintain a strong work performance. And even when things start to go wrong at work, you have setbacks. These are the ones that, they're like that punching bag that just pops right back up. They can persevere and even thrive in difficult times. Engagement's important because it makes a difference to the bottom line. This isn't about people holding hands and singing Kumbaya. This is about the bottom line. There's a real financial difference to companies that invest in their employees and try to have a more than average engaged workforce. Active disengagement, those ones I talked about that are sort of working against you, they are costing between $450 billion and $550 billion per year in the American workplace. It's a staggering amount.
It's a lot.
Yeah. Only 41% of employees felt that they know what their company stands for and what makes its brand different from its competitors. And Gallup found that managers who focus on their employees' strengths can practically eliminate active disengagement. And the other thing that I thought was really sobering for many in their study is that engagement levels among service employees, those frontline, the ones that are dealing directly with your customers, have the lowest levels of engagement. And when you think about it, if you go to a fast food restaurant or a big box store, often the level of service that you get is very poor. And I think about, the corporate headquarters, wherever they might be located in the country, they may have a bunch of really engaged people who are designing their marketing programs and designing their stores, but then it comes down to, the person behind the cash register ringing them out. That's my experience with them as a consumer, not the guys that are at the headquarters making the big decisions.
Mm-hmm. I think that's what's great about Mountain Land. You mentioned that there's a real bottom line effect there where disengaged employees can cost billions of dollars per year due to their lack of engagement. And Mountain Land is fostering a kind of environment, at least we're working towards that, where those costs are limited.
Right.
I don't know that there's ever going to be 100% engagement, but Mountain Land is certainly trying to reduce the loss from unengaged employees. And, we've talked about the difference between Mountain Land and a big box store. And you mentioned that the big box store employees are the ones who are least engaged. They're not necessarily getting the corporate vision. But at Mountain Land, the people that you're going to be engaging with are already sold on the company's mission, its core principles. We've talked about our core principles several times, and that's what you're going to get. Instead of getting the kind of treatment you would at a big box store, you're going to get the kind of treatment that you can expect from a fully engaged workforce. Thanks for coming on, Lenore. We will certainly talk to you again in the future about what else Mountain Land is doing. You can find out more about our core principles and more about what things Mountain Land believes in at mountainlandsupply.com. You can also find this podcast at mountainlandsupply.com/supplywise. You can find it wherever you find your favorite podcasts. Make sure you tune in every week to learn more about the products and services that make you Supplywise.